Elon Musk just said SpaceX is building a self-growing city on the moon within 10 years. Not Mars, the moon. After spending a decade telling everyone Mars was humanity's future, he flipped the script 8 days ago. A permanent lunar city before we even set foot on the red planet. So let's talk about what that actually means. For you, for your body, for the reality of waking up in 1/6 gravity with toxic dust in your lungs and 2 weeks of darkness outside your habitat window. Because you've heard the Musk plan, you've seen the renders. The question isn't whether it sounds cool. The question is, would you actually want to do this? And to answer that, you need to understand both sides. The vision that could change everything, and the brutal reality that doesn't care about anyone's vision. Let's start with what Musk is actually trying to do. Because this isn't just hype. This is a fundamental bet on economics. Here's the thing nobody talks about when they quote NASA's $93 billion Artemis price tag. That's not what it costs to go to the moon. That's what it costs when you're using disposable rockets built by old aerospace contractors charging government rates. The Space Launch System costs billions per launch. Billions. With a B every single time. You use it once and throw most of it in the ocean. Musk looked at that and said, what if we don't throw anything away? What if rockets work like airplanes? You fly them, you land them, you refuel them, you fly them again. That's the entire thesis behind Starship. Full reusability. And if it works, the economics are absolutely insane. SpaceX's target cost per Starship launch is around $2 million. Not billions. $2 million. The fuel alone costs about $900,000. The rest is operations and maintenance. Compare that to traditional rockets where you're rebuilding the entire vehicle every time. It's the difference between buying a new Boeing 737 for every single flight versus just paying for jet fuel and crew. And here's the other number that matters. NASA spent $50 billion in today's money to develop the Saturn V that took us to the moon the first time. SpaceX has developed Starship, which is bigger and more capable, for somewhere between $2 and $4 billion. That's not a 10% improvement. That's a 90% cost reduction in development alone. This is why investors keep funding Musk even when timelines slip. The math is too compelling to ignore. So what does that enable? If you can drop the cost of getting to lunar orbit by 2 orders of magnitude, suddenly things that were impossible become merely hard. You can send more missions. You can afford to fail and try again. You can build infrastructure piece by piece instead of betting everything on one perfect mission. This is the vision. Not that Musk is smarter than NASA engineers, but that reusable rockets break the economic model that made lunar cities unthinkable. And if it works, here's what it could look like. Imagine starships landing on the moon every month. Not every few years, every month. Each one bringing 100 tons of cargo, habitat modules, solar panels, mining equipment, rovers, supplies, crew rotations. You bootstrap the infrastructure the same way we built transcontinental railroads or Antarctic research stations. Slowly, incrementally, but continuously. The first base starts small, maybe a dozen people living in pre-built habitats buried under regolith for radiation protection. They're not tourists, they're engineers and technicians working 12-hour days, setting up the solar farms and digging for water ice in the permanently shadowed craters. It's brutal work, but they're getting paid well and they know they're building something historic. 5 years in, you've got 50 people on the surface. The ISRU plant is running, splitting water ice into hydrogen and oxygen. You're making your own rocket fuel. You're 3D printing construction materials from regolith. The greenhouses are producing some of your food, which means fewer supply runs from Earth. The economics start to close. Each ton of cargo you don't have to ship from Earth saves $2 million. 10 years in, if everything goes right, you've got a couple hundred people, multiple habitats, a functioning spaceport with landing pads and refueling infrastructure, maybe even the first commercial mining operation extracting rare elements to ship back to Earth. It's still government-funded and corporate-backed, but there's a path to self-sufficiency. The city is growing itself, new modules being built from lunar materials, new crew staying longer because there's real work to do and infrastructure to support them. 20 years in, maybe you've got families. Maybe there are kids born in 1/6 gravity which opens a whole new set of questions we'll get to in a minute. Maybe there's a real economy with multiple companies competing for contracts. Tourism starts to become viable for the ultra-wealthy. The moon isn't just an outpost anymore. It's a destination, a place people choose to go. That's the vision. That's what Musk is selling. And here's the thing, it's not impossible. The technology exists or is being actively developed. The economics could work if reusability delivers even half of what's promised. The strategic incentives are aligned because the US government doesn't want China to own the moon first. And SpaceX is really good at turning government contracts into commercial capabilities. But, and this is a very big but, vision doesn't keep you alive in 1/6 gravity with cosmic rays punching through your habitat and toxic dust in your lungs. Let's talk about what NASA is actually doing right now, because the gap between vision and reality is measured in years of grinding technical work. Artemis 3, the mission that's supposed to put humans back on the lunar surface for the first time since 1972, just got pushed to mid-2027. That's the optimistic timeline. Artemis 2, which is just a flyby, got delayed to April 2026. We're not even landing yet, and we're already behind schedule. The technical problems aren't with the rockets, they're with everything else. The lander, the refueling architecture, life support systems, radiation shielding, dust mitigation. Speaking of dust, let's talk about lunar regolith. This stuff is nightmare fuel. It's not like beach sand. It's not like anything on Earth. Lunar dust is electrostatically charged, abrasive, and it sticks to everything. The Apollo astronauts dealt with it for a few days, and they couldn't get it out of their suits. They were sneezing, their eyes were irritated, and the dust was still there when they got back to Earth. Now imagine living with that for months, years, breathing it in day after day. NASA's own risk assessments list respiratory, cardiovascular, and ocular hazards. One study exposed human cells to lunar dust simulant and found measurable toxic effects. You're not just dealing with an annoyance. You're dealing with a chronic health threat that gets into your habitat no matter how careful you are. Then there's radiation. The moon has no magnetosphere, no thick atmosphere, nothing between you and the cosmic rays that pummel the surface constantly. You need meters of regolith shielding just to get down to survivable exposure levels. Every time you go outside, you're accumulating radiation dose that increases your cancer risk. Solar storms can dump lethal doses in hours. Your habitat design isn't just about comfort, it's about not dying from radiation sickness. And the nights. Lunar nights last 14 Earth days. 14 days of darkness, no sunlight for solar panels, no warmth. Temperatures drop to minus 173 degrees Celsius. Your power systems have to carry you through 2 weeks of night, every month, indefinitely. Battery technology? Not there yet. Nuclear power? Sure, but now you're shipping a reactor to the moon and maintaining it in a dust-filled, high-radiation environment. The engineering challenges stack up fast. But here's the thing that should really concern you. The gravity, 1/6 of Earth's. That sounds fun, right? Bouncing around like the Apollo astronauts? Not when you're living there. Not when your bones are demineralizing and your muscles are atrophying because your body doesn't need to work as hard to move. We know microgravity is terrible for human health. Astronauts on the ISS lose bone density, their cardiovascular systems weaken, their immune systems get suppressed. Partial gravity might reduce some of those effects, but we don't have long-duration data. We've never kept a human in lunar gravity for months or years. And here's the counterintuitive part. Mars' gravity is 0.38 times Earth's. The moon is 0.167. Mars gives your body more than twice the gravitational load. That might be the difference between manageable health decline and permanent disability. A study from late 2024 looked at marine skeletal and immune responses to lunar gravity simulation and found significant deterioration. The moon might actually be worse for your long-term health than Mars, despite being infinitely easier to reach. Think about that. The place that's 3 days away could cripple you faster than the place that's 9 months away. So you've got this tension. On one side, Musk's economic revolution that could make lunar access routine. On the other side, an environment that's actively hostile to human biology in ways we're only beginning to understand. Both things can be true at the same time. The question is, which one wins? And that depends on problems we haven't solved yet. In situ resource utilization. Can we really extract enough water ice from those permanently shadowed craters to make fuel and drinking water at scale? We have experimental concepts. We don't have operational systems, closed-loop life support. Can we recycle air and water with near-perfect efficiency for years without resupply? The ISS gets close, but not close enough. One failure and people die. Radiation shielding. Meters of regolith sounds great until you realize you need to move millions of tons of abrasive dust that destroys equipment. And you need to do it with robots and construction equipment that can survive the thermal cycling and radiation long enough to be useful. And even if we crack all the technical problems, there's the human factor. Isolation, confinement, circadian disruption from the day-night cycle that doesn't match human biology. The psychological strain of knowing that outside your habitat is a lethal environment and the nearest help is 3 days away at best. NASA's behavioral health risk assessments flag this as a major operational concern. We've seen what happens to people in Antarctic research stations, on submarines, in long-duration ISS missions. The moon is going to be harder. Here's what a realistic timeline looks like if we're being honest about both the opportunities and the obstacles. First crewed landing, Artemis 3, mid-2027 if things go well. Short-duration surface missions for the next few years after that. Maybe a semi-permanent base camp by the early 2030s, with rotating crews staying for weeks or months at a time. That's where Musk's reusable economics really start to matter. If SpaceX can deliver crew and cargo at even 10 times the cost of their target, still way cheaper than the old model. Routine crew rotations and sustained presence, mid to late 2030s. An actual settlement where people live long-term and maybe raise families? Later than that, much later. But not never, not impossible. And if we do get there, if we solve the technical problems and the economics work and the political will continues, what does life on the moon actually look like for the people living it? You wake up in a habitat module that's probably cylindrical, made of lightweight materials, and buried under several meters of regolith for radiation shielding. The walls are close. The air smells recycled because it is. You check the dust levels in the airlock from yesterday's EVA and start the cleaning cycle again, knowing you'll never get it all out. Breakfast is a protein bar or maybe some hydroponic greens if the crop didn't fail this cycle. You have work to do outside, so you suit up, knowing that every minute in the suit is another dose of radiation and another layer of dust you'll bring back inside. The view is stunning. Earthrise over a barren, airless horizon. Black sky even at noon. But you can't stay out long. Your consumables are limited, and there's always something breaking down that needs repair. Solar panels covered in dust, seals degraded by temperature cycling, electronics fried by radiation. Maintenance is a constant battle against an environment that's actively trying to kill you. And after 14 hours of work, you come back inside, scrub down as best you can, and try to relax in a space the size of a small RV that you share with 5 other people and can never leave. You call home with the 1-second delay that makes conversation just awkward enough to be exhausting. You try to sleep, but your body is confused because the sun has been up for 9 Earth days straight and won't set for another 5. That's the reality. That's what you're signing up for. Not the render of a gleaming city with Earth hanging in the sky. The daily grind of survival in a place that has no interest in whether you make it or not. But here's what makes it complicated. Maybe that's worth it. Maybe being part of the first permanent human presence beyond Earth is worth the radiation exposure and the dust and the isolation. Maybe knowing that your work is enabling the next phase of human civilization is enough to get you through the 14th straight day of sunlight and the constant equipment failures and the knowledge that one bad solar storm could kill everyone in the settlement if the shielding fails. People have done harder things. The first settlers in Antarctica faced similar mortality rates, and they didn't even have the excuse of expanding humanity to another world. The early oil rig workers in the North Sea dealt with brutal conditions and constant danger because the pay was good and the work mattered. Humans are surprisingly good at adapting to hostile environments if we have a reason and the right support systems. So here's where we actually are. China is targeting a basic lunar base by 2035 through their International Lunar Research Station program. The United States doesn't want to cede the moon to geopolitical rivals, so Artemis continues and SpaceX is getting billion-dollar contracts. Musk's pivot to moon first makes sense because that's where the money's flowing right now. The technology is being developed, the missions are being planned, the economic case is getting stronger every time Starship sticks a landing. The gap between we can send astronauts to the lunar surface for a week and we can build a permanent, self-sustaining city is still enormous. But it's not infinite. It's not impossible. It's just hard. Really, really hard. The kind of hard that takes decades and billions of dollars, and accepting that some people are going to die along the way, because that's what happens when you push the boundaries of human survival. So, are you living on the moon soon? If you're a civilian hoping to buy a ticket and set up shop in a lunar condo, you're looking at decades minimum, possibly never. If you're asking whether humans will be living on the moon in your lifetime, the answer is probably yes, if you're under 40 and the programs continue. But those first humans won't be living comfortable lives. They'll be pioneers dealing with conditions that make Antarctic research stations look luxurious. The real question isn't whether we can do it. We probably can, given enough time and resources and accepting the risks. The real question is, would you want to? Would you trade breathable air and blue skies and the ability to walk outside without a suit for the chance to be part of something historic? Would you accept permanent health consequences from low gravity and radiation exposure for the opportunity to help build a new world? Would you be okay with never seeing a forest or an ocean or feeling rain on your face again, knowing that your work might enable future generations to spread throughout the solar system? Because that's the trade. That's what Musk is really asking when he talks about self-growing cities on the moon. Not whether the technology can work, whether enough people care enough to accept the cost. In money, in health, in quality of life, in risk, some people will say yes. The same kind of people who climbed Everest before there were fixed ropes and Sherpas, who sailed to Antarctica not knowing if they'd ever come back, who signed up to test experimental aircraft knowing the mortality rate. Humans have always had a subset of the population willing to risk everything for the frontier. The question is whether you're one of them. Because the moon isn't going to be your home in the comfortable sense. It's not going to be easy or safe or pleasant most of the time. But it might be possible, and if Musk's economic model works, if reusable rockets really do break the cost barrier, it might be possible sooner than anyone expected. What we're watching right now is the earliest stage of a process that could unfold over the next few decades. Musk's moon-first pivot shows where the momentum is building. The technology is real. The challenges are real. The economics might actually work. And the geopolitical incentives mean this is probably going to happen, whether it makes perfect sense or not. So here's my answer. No, you're not moving to the moon soon unless you're already training as an astronaut or engineer. But yes, there's a non-zero chance that within your lifetime, there will be humans living on the moon continuously. And yes, those early settlers are going to deal with conditions that will make this video look optimistic in hindsight. And yes, some of them will probably think it was worth it anyway. The moon is 3 days away. We have the technology to get there. We're starting to have the economics to stay there. What we don't know yet is whether we have the will to accept what it's actually going to take. Not the vision, the reality, the dust and the radiation and the isolation and the grinding daily work of not dying in an environment that doesn't care whether you succeed. That's the conversation we should be having. Not whether it's possible, whether it's worth it, and whether you specifically would sign up if given the chance. Because someone's going to. The question is whether it's enough people to build something that lasts, or just enough to prove it can be done before we decide Mars makes more sense after all. Either way, if you want to understand what humans are capable of when we push ourselves to the absolute limit, keep watching. The moon is just the beginning. And what happens there in the next 10 to 20 years is going to tell us a lot about whether we're really serious about becoming a spacefaring species, or whether we're just good at making plans we don't follow through on. So, would you go? Would you trade everything Earth offers for a chance to live on the moon? Think about it, because if Musk is even half right about the timeline, someone's going to have to answer that question for real a lot sooner than most people expect.